President and CEO of the Los Angeles World Affairs Council and Town Hall. Thank you so very much for joining us and for your ongoing support of our live stream programs. We have a terrific lineup of programs coming up for you in the coming weeks, and we also will be talking about those right after the program, as well as opportunities where you can help us keep these quality programs going. It is now my pleasure to introduce a very special program, a conversation with Mexican Ambassador to the United States, Martha Barcena Coqui, hosted by the Honorable Maria Contreras Sweet, the 24th Administrator of the U.S. Small Business Administration. Maria, Ambassador, we are so thrilled to have you both on today. I'd love to turn this over to you, Maria, so that you can begin this excellent program.
All right, thank you so much, Kim. Ambassador, what a delight to have you visiting with us today, albeit virtually.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Kim. It's really my pleasure to be with you. I remember that I met the Los Angeles World Affairs Council last year, and well, things have changed from last year to, we have had a challenging year from 2019 to 2020, so I'm very happy to be here with you.
Indeed, things have dramatically changed, and so we're very much looking forward to discussing today in a very special program the symbiotic relationship between the United States and Mexico. And just to put it in perspective, what I find is that the news is much about our relationship with China, and sometimes people forget the important role that Mexico plays. First and foremost, in my view, the fact that you are a border country, it's critical that we have an interconnected relationship so that we have secure America, both our North America partners, Canada and Mexico, because you are so close. And so if you are not safe, if you're aligned with our enemies, then that does not keep the United States any safer. Secondly, I think sometimes people forget the economic impact that Mexico has on the United States. People again talk about China, but in fact, it is Mexico that is our second largest procurer after Canada. And I recall when I was California Secretary of Transportation and California was in trouble with our energy crisis, it was Mexico that came through and allowed us to borrow some energy to get us through economically. So thank you very much for that on behalf of Californians. But just in all ways, we have such a symbiotic relationship. And so we're delighted to have such a distinguished career diplomat in your position, and your reputation is stellar. All that you have done around the world, in Italy, and all the languages that you know, and everything that you bring to bear as a Fulbright scholar. So again, we're just delighted to have you be the face of the great Mexico to the United States. As you know, I am an immigrant, and I know that you have an immigrant story as well, and so I'm delighted to hear that. But let's just start then with the economic issues. I think that everybody's interested to have your perspectives on the USMCA, we will say the new formed NAFTA that everybody knows about. Would you please give us your sense about what you think fared better and what you think some of the challenges are? And from a trade standpoint, what would you like to see improved?
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much, Maria, for these questions and the introduction. First of all, I would like to underline that I totally agree with you, that sometimes the debate in the US is very focused on China and other countries, and people forget the importance of Mexico for the US. It's not only the incredible trade, we trade more than 600 billion a year, and Mexico was almost all last year the first trading partner of the US. And this last month, we again became the first trading partner of the US. We are the second trading partner to California. We trade $80 billion with California every year. Just for a comparison, these $80 billion that Mexico trades with California is larger than the trade of the US with Brazil. So just to put it in context, but it's not only trade, it's that we share a common history. Sometimes people forget that California was part of Mexico until 1848, and that next year that we celebrate our independence, California will be celebrating its independence too from Spain. And we share culture, we shared a huge Mexican community or community of Mexican origin, almost 38 million people. And so our future is totally interlinked. Whatever happens to Mexico affects the United States, and whatever happens in the US affects Mexico. And we are more than twin countries. We are totally interlinked. And what is the challenges that we have now and the advantages? I think USMCA was a great achievement because it has given us legal certainty in moments of uncertainty. When we started to renegotiate USMCA, very few people bet that we would reach an end. And very few people imagined that we were going to have something as COVID. So in a sea of uncertainty, let's say that USMCA gave us certainty. USMCA has different aspects in comparison to NAFTA. It included new areas like small and medium enterprises, like the gender perspective, like consultations with indigenous populations, like e-trade, digital commerce that was not included before. And above all, it included new chapters on labor rights and environmental issues that are so dear also for Mexico and California. At the same time, it included new aspects on rules of origin in sectors as automotive and aerospace. And these new rules of origin were designed to attract more investment to the North American region and to enter a new stage of economic interdependence between Mexico, the US, and Canada. And it will imply the transformation of the automotive industry for what I see, it's becoming electric cars, mass transit, transportation, and also a new level of interaction in the technology areas. So what are the challenges that we have? The implementation of USMCA and the challenge to be a more competitive region in 3 different areas that I will focalize: infrastructure, energy that you mentioned, and human capital. And how do we interact on that? Because in human capital and also with digital commerce, with this transformation, we will see that we will need and we will benefit from being bilingual. And that is the strength also for the Mexican community in the US and for Mexico. To be bilingual will be cool, ser bilingüe is cool, and we will need to work on that. We will see that in technological, software, everything on digital commerce, we will need to be more bilingual. So I think USMCA was a great achievement. It was not easy, but we have it there and it gives us certainty in times of uncertainty.
Well, thank you for that thoughtful answer. Let me just say, if I may, that when I was in office, I hosted the first global ministerial around entrepreneurship. You know, and I saw my counterparts meeting with their international partners. I thought we need to host an inaugural small business ministerial, and so we were able to work through some of those aspects of entrepreneurship, a way in which that small businesses could resolve disputes to protect their patents and so forth. So I'm delighted that that made its way through the new USMCA. So I'm delighted about that. Economically speaking, you've been a real asset to the United States as well in terms of helping us navigate through challenges that we might find in each other's countries. You may have heard I'm on the board of SEMPRA, and I know that you've been an angel in helping us interpret and communicate and understand the inner workings of Mexico so that we can have, again, a symbiotic relationship and assure that both countries have sufficient energy supply to be able to do all of the things that we're discussing here today.
I totally agree, Maria. First, I would like to address the issue of entrepreneurship and innovation. I think it's an area that it's not, that we have all the field in front of us. What we have done, it's fine, but we need to do more on innovation and entrepreneurship, because the young generations, both in Mexico and the US, they are totally complementary, and we need to work more on that. Only in a few coming days, we will be launching a new fund for innovation and entrepreneurship. And we are also relaunching the Cooperation in Innovation and Higher Education for BESI. And we hope that we will continue also doing all this work with FUMEC, also the Fund for Innovation. On the issue of energy, I am, if you see my CV, you are in the board of SEMPRA, but I was a Mexican ambassador to Denmark, Norway, and Iceland. It was an energy embassy. Denmark, wind and energy efficiency, Norway, oil and gas, Iceland, geothermal. Very few people know that when we supply energy to California, it came from geothermal at the border with Baja California, the Cerro Prieto station. And then I was ambassador to Turkey, Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, and Azerbaijan. All Turkey, not big producer, but all the gas pipes and oil pipes go through Turkey from Middle East to Europe. And Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, and Azerbaijan, great producers of oil and gas. So I know that the relevance of the oil markets, the global oil markets, and that the gas markets are more regional. But how do we work on that? And I think we are privileged to know that both Mexico and the US are more or less self-sufficient now in energy, but that we have to talk to each other to see and to agree on what is the future that we want. Because we have two greatest strengths in the North American region: the capacity to be self-sufficient, US, Mexico, and Canada in energy, and the capacity to be self-sufficient also in agriculture and food. This is easier said than done. I mean, no other region in the world is self-sufficient in both energy and food and agriculture. So I've been very much involved in all the projects of SEMPRA in Mexico that have to do with LNG terminals, but also in storage installations on gas pipes. And I am convinced that with dialogue and with understanding each other, we can progress and we can have a better access for all our people, both in the US and in Mexico.
Well, thank you for that. We all understand, especially those of us that are parked in California right now, how critical it is when the power goes out. We all, everything goes out, right? My laptop, my computer, my phone, everything goes out. So we all understand the fundamental nature of this discussion. Moving forward now into the idea of health, which is also fundamental. We're all, obviously we're in a worldwide pandemic. Could you give us a sense of how you're doing, what stories you have that you can share that we might learn from? What lessons have you learned through your process?
Yes, Maria, of course. I will make reference to two different levels. One that I would like to start with, it's something that very few people talk about, and that is the impact of COVID in the Latino and the Mexican community in the US. Very few people know that more than 2,800 Mexicans have died in the US of COVID. Most of them in New York, but followed by California. And they have died because a lot of them have been working in the so-called essential sectors, have been essential workers in the agriculture, in meat packing industries, in grocery stores, and in the health system. So they have been essential workers, putting their life at risk to bring food and to bring services to the US population. These have put us in a lot of pressure, because a lot of them wanted, of course, to return their bodies to Mexico, but with COVID sanitary measures, that couldn't be done. So we have had supported the families for cremation purposes, and even the Mexican government sent a plane to New York just to bring back around 300 urns with the ashes of the Mexicans that have died. So our network of consulates in the US, which is more than 50 consulates in the US, have been working extra hours to support the Mexican community. Because it's not only the people that have died, but the families that were left behind. Sometimes widows that haven't worked in many years, but have small children, and we have to support them to guarantee that they have had access to food through bank foods. We have been working with Mexican companies, with civil society organizations, with all the local authorities, and we are very grateful to the California government of what they have done for all people in California, including undocumented workers. So that has taken us a lot of effort. The other side that we have been trying to explain and work is on the situation of COVID in Mexico. The situation of COVID in Mexico has been, as you have maybe read, it has affected us very much. We have lost already more than 65,000 people of COVID in Mexico, which is a very high number that we hope that it will now, the curve is plateauing, so we hope that the number of people infected will not continue to grow. And also with all the experience that we have had both in the US and Mexico on therapeutics, more and more people that are affected with COVID are now getting better after a while. So what was the strategy of the Mexican government? Unfortunately, the new government of President López Obrador found a health system that it was not in the best condition, with a lot of hospitals that were not fully furnished, fully equipped. So the main objective of the government was to guarantee that all people that got infected with COVID could have access to hospital beds. And and the government guaranteed that. Of course, we have not implemented the number of tests that some other countries have done, including the US, because of many reasons, but we have implemented very strict federal guidelines for social distancing in the same way as the US, for using mouth covers. That's a Mexican one. We always use it, and two, also part of lockdown. We have now what is called a traffic light system. That means when we are in red light, it's total lockdown. When we are in orange, 30% of activities can come back and can be opened, with a lot of restrictions, no more than 50 people, no more than 20 people. Then we have the yellow light, in which 50% of activities can return, and the green light, it's when every activity can be taking place, including schools. On a federal guidelines, all schools in Mexico are still closed. And we are educating students through internet, but also through television, because a lot of houses in Mexico do not have access to internet, around 40%. So we are using television, and Mexico has used television for educating people for many years. So we are one of the countries with more experience on television education. As in the US, we are a federal country. So besides the federal guidelines, each state has its own guidelines to guarantee security. And some states like Quintana Roo or Baja California Sur have been working putting particular attention, for example, in the tourism industry, to guarantee cleanliness and sanitation in the industry. And in that context, we've been working very hard through the Border Health Commission and with the US on the situation of COVID at the border. Unfortunately, both in Mexico and the US, some of the states more affected have been the border states, but not necessarily the counties or the municipalities. But we are seeing also in the Mexican side, in Sonora, in Baja California, in Tamaulipas, a plateauing of the infections and the number of deaths. And so we hope that this will continue to go down and that we cooperate very closely. We have been very lucky that California and Baja California cooperate quite well. Also Sonora, Arizona, but we have had more challenges with Texas and the 4 Mexican states on the Mexican side.
Interesting that you mentioned that, because one of my fondest memories of my work as California Secretary of Transportation was attending the Estados Fronterizos summit, the conferences that we had every year where we had working tables and did tabletop exercises around infrastructure, around, you know, energy, around the environment, water, health, all these different issues. And so I know that you continue to do that good work.
Yes.
And so that reminds me of my next question. I have two more before we open up to Q&A.
Yes.
And that is that clearly, I remember that one of the projects that we worked on was that you were kind, Mexico was very good about allowing San Diego, for example, just as one example, San Diego was landlocked in terms of building its airport capacity,
Yes.
its tourism capacity. And so what we did is we built a little walkway so that many of the San Diego community could use the airport in Mexico. And then we saw that you amplified the airport so that then people would cross the street and come into the United States and get into San Diego very easily. So thank you for that. What are the other things that you're seeing, the challenges or opportunities around the border and just in general, what you think the U.S. might consider doing in the future?
Yes, I think your experience as the Secretary of Transportation of California is very important. And I love that you mentioned this innovative idea of CBX, of, you know, landing in Tijuana and then crossing and entering into the US. This area has been very badly affected by COVID. But slowly but steadily, the numbers are going up, and we will continue to work on that. I would say now that we have different types of challenges at the border and opportunities. The first challenge, I would put it on border crossings, which are related to ports of entry, to infrastructure. The priority for both countries is Otay Mesa 2. We are working hard on that. But as you know, we have done also a refurbishment of San Isidro, California, and then after Otay Mesa, we have some other expansions in Laredo for trains. We have expansions predicted also in Gateway, in the Gateway Bridge in also parts of Texas. And we have annual meetings on border crossings, and we see how is the progress, what are the permits that we are needed, how we are advancing, because one of the challenges is to advance parallel at the same time. Sometimes the US goes ahead in some projects, sometimes Mexico, and one of the challenges is to really identify which are the priorities for both countries. And sometimes, you know, it's not easy. The decisions in Mexico are taken at federal level, the decisions in the US are taken at local level. So we have to harmonize that. The second big challenge on infrastructure, I would say, has to do with sanitation and with environment. So we have the Tijuana River Sanitation Project now we're working very hard, and after 6 months of problems, now for the first month, we are not sending any sewage fortunately to the Tijuana River, but we need to work harder on that. And that was part of the agreements of USMCA, and even some very important amount allocated of $300 million to EPA to deal with the sanitation in Tijuana. But we have other challenges also in the Laredos, in Douglas, Arizona, Ciudad Juarez, El Paso, and we have also challenges on air pollution. And then we have the common challenge in California and Baja California and Mexico, you know well, of the Rio Colorado and how has been drying up. The climate change is really affecting the level of water coming into Rio Colorado. So we need to work that with an attitude that we share a common environment. And how do we deal with this common environment and this responsibility to protect this common environment? That I would synthesize, we have more challenges, but those are the main challenges, let's say, in the mid to long term. The more short-term challenge is to see where we can open the border to all travels, because now it's restricted only to essential travels. And we are reviewing the situation every month. The next review will take place just before the 21st of September to see if we can open to other activities or we will continue to be closed only to essential travels and in the whole Mexican-US border. On opportunities, I'm always very optimistic, and I think the border is one of the most incredible areas in the world for innovation and creativity. Tijuana, which is the twin city of San Diego, is one of the most innovative and culturally vibrant and food vibrant in Mexico. And we have companies as Technofisher, high-level tech software for research. Tijuana is one of the hubs for aerospace, for technological innovation. We have Ciudad Juárez is the other hub, the twin city of El Paso for technological innovation. So I think what we need is to show the world together what the border means. And the border is not synonymous of violence and crime. Yes, we have some violence and crime. We need to fight together the organized crime, drug trafficking, arms trafficking, money trafficking. But the border is full of opportunities. And this is the border, is vibrant. And this is the border that was established after 1848. But if you go back to the California history, just the name of Los Angeles, San Diego, San Francisco, Santa Barbara is the common history that we share. And is the common history that we have to continue to build for the future, for our common common interest, common future. And people like you and me and Kim are the ones that we have to work hard for this.
Thank you for that very thoughtful answer. I really appreciate that. I'm just going to ask you if you could just briefly comment on one thing, because you know we know each other's stories, and you know mine. Obviously, I was born in Guadalajara, Jalisco, and came here. And my abuelita would always say, "Mija, although we've been migrant workers, I hope that someday you're able to work in an office and maybe be a secretary." And so I was delighted when the governor asked me to hold office and to be a cabinet secretary for the state of California. Those are the stories that we can replicate, and with great opportunity. And I think that each other's strengths and opportunities allow us in the US to be able to flourish and to take innovation and expand it. You know, Henry Ford said it best, right? He said, if our workers cannot afford to buy the vehicle, then how do we sell cars? Exactly. And so also the United States has to understand, if we don't have a world that is economically developed and we don't deepen democracies in other countries, then how can we have procurers around the world buying our goods and services? And so, especially as I said, California at the front end of the conversation. So I'm just going to, I'm being nudged here to open up to Q&A because everybody has so many questions of you. So I'm going to ask you just briefly, my daughter would kill me if I didn't ask you this question. Tell me, as a woman, you've been in some of the toughest places around the world.
Yes. What
do you hope your legacy is? How do you hope to represent women? It's not on the list here of questions to ask you, but I couldn't resist.
And I think it's a very good question. I think the main characteristic of a woman diplomat, and when we sit at the table, I would say, and the main area in which I put all my effort is empathy. It's try to understand the other, what they are saying, not be very alpha, and this is my position and this has to prevail. But no, is to sit at the table, be in a country and try to understand why they are saying what they are saying, why they are thinking that way, and how to convey then your priorities or your sentiments or your instructions in a way that the other side, the other party can understand you better. And this is one of the first things. And the second is really to open more opportunities for women. Because I remember when we were negotiating this in June last year, this terrible negotiation of tariffs and migration, you remember. On the US side, there was no woman at the table. On the Mexican side, we were two, the Secretary of Economy and me. And I really think that when we discuss the very desperate situation of the Central Americans coming through Mexico to the US, I mean, I don't think men could understand why women would leave everything behind with 2 children, and with babies to look for a better way of life. And I kept repeating, these are desperate people taking desperate measures. So we need to understand that. So as long as we have more women at the table, I think we will have a different approach that is not better or worse than men. It's different. And so it can be complementary. So empathy and more women at the table are two key elements for having a different world. And
Thank you.
if I'm able to convey that during my stay in the US, I will feel satisfied.
I remember attending El Cumbre de las Americas, the Summit of the Americas in Panama, and the convening there with President Varela, and sitting at that table with all the heads of state of all of the Latin American countries, and seeing how few women were in the room. So we are fans of yours and wish you continued success. I'm going to ask Kim now to open up for Q&A, because I know everybody's chomping at the bit here to have their questions addressed. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria.
Thank you, Maria. Ambassador, great to see you again. I know our group absolutely loved meeting with you when we were in DC last spring. So I am delighted to have you back. Our first question.
Yes.
Has Mexico engaged directly with American industry in order to expand manufacturing, creating a supply chain so we can become more self-reliant in North America? Example, pharmaceuticals and goods manufacturing.
Yes, thank you, Jessica. It's a very good question. I think one of the, unintended consequences of COVID-19 is that we realized that we were more integrated than we thought. So when there was a lockdown in the US and then in Mexico, and the US started to open its economy and to list their essential sectors, the list of essential sectors in the US was there since many years ago. But in Mexico, we didn't have a list of essential sectors. So we had to understand how integrated we were and try to harmonize then the list of essential sectors in both countries to guarantee that when the economic reopening took place in the US, they would be able to have their supply chains and the supply from Mexico. So an example that I give, Boeing, they called me once and said, Ambassador, we really need you to open a number of factories so that we continue to produce in the US. And said, okay, tell me where, when, how many. They had 52 suppliers, 52 different factories in 26 states of Mexico, and we are 32. And these suppliers were not only tier 1 suppliers, but tier 2 up to tier 5. So to understand the supply chains during COVID was a great lesson for both of us. But it also showed us that we were too dependent on other regions. And that in certain areas like medical equipment, pharmaceuticals, automotive, aerospace, defense and security, and also technological areas like, for example, cell phones and these, we need to rely more on the North American region. So we've been identifying the companies that approach us during the COVID and that they told us we are having plans to expand in Mexico. We are looking now for suppliers in Mexico instead of suppliers in Asia, in Europe, because Mexico never failed us and the suppliers in Europe failed us and the suppliers in Asia failed us. And we are working with a general, let's say, a general strategy of showing them all the opportunities that they can find in Mexico to expand or establish them, including the number of engineers that we graduate every year. We graduate every year 130,000 engineers, which is more engineers in Mexico graduate every year than in Germany. And we also are working on a more sectorial basis, identifying the priority sectors to strengthen the North American regions, and then going down to factories. So we're working with companies as Lockheed Martin, as Foxconn, we're working with 3M, with Medtronic. They have huge operations in Mexico and they are planning to expand. So we're working at general level, sectorial level, and company level. So if you please have any ideas or approaches at any of these levels, please contact me. contact the embassy and we will return to all of you and said, okay, this is how we are working, these are our opportunities, and this is how we are seeing the issues. The lead on these matters is taken in Mexico by the Secretariat of Economy. We have here at the embassy an office of the Secretary of Economy that works, of course, with me. And then we interact with the Secretary of Economy on everyday basis. What we do is in the US, through the consulates at the embassy, we identify the opportunities, but then for the landing in Mexico, we work with the Secretariat of Economy.
Let's see, I'm muted. Sorry about that. Thank you so much. Our next question. The US and Mexico are both impacted by the coronavirus. The economic impact on Mexico is severe, with a substantial reduction of Mexico's gross national product. What emergency efforts are being implemented to meet the needs of the Mexican people? And what measures are being implemented to continue and maintain trade with the US and with Mexico and with the US and California, between Mexico?
Yes. Yes, there are two different levels of answers. If it's true, the Mexican economy has been very heavily impacted. Most of the prediction or estimates is that our economy will decrease around 8%, 8 to 9% this year, which is really very bad numbers. We acknowledge that. So the priority of the government of President López Obrador has been to concentrate on the most vulnerable people. Why? Because if you think that around 40% of the Mexican economy is informal, so he has concentrated efforts on supporting, all people, third age people, children, young people, and also small and medium business. Maybe some of them are not even formal, but they are receiving loans. I have some numbers. For example, we have the government has issued 2.1 million loans disbursed for housing, especially for social housing, 2 million credits delivered to small and medium businesses in the formal and informal sectors. And we have been concentrating on those areas. It is true, it is different to the US. We don't have had an unemployment insurance, and neither there has been measures to support the big companies. But there have been some efforts by the Central Bank of Mexico also to give some more resources and more tools to the banking sector in Mexico so that they can do promotions like, for example, you can pay with credit card 6 to 1 year, no interest rates, and to give the interest rates in Mexico have also gone down this year from almost 7% to 4%. And the new budget was introduced, the budget for 2021 was introduced just 2 days ago, and it expects an economic growth for next year of 4%, and to concentrate resources on some projects that will create employment in Mexico, and also to concentrate resources to support the most vulnerable one. I think it's not only Mexico, but the US, and if you see the data in Europe, in countries like Italy, Spain, and also other Latin American countries, Peru, Ecuador, and even the estimates of ECLAC, CEPAL, and the IMF, it's the whole region will be affected. The whole world will be affected. So that is why USMCA and the US-Mexico cooperation is key for the future. And in the case of trade between Mexico and California and Mexico and the United States in general, I already mentioned that we, in the 21st of March, we reached an agreement with the US government to reduce the land crossings and the land traffic to essential travels only. This has basically affected people and, the traffic of light vehicles, but the trade and the cargo has continued to grow. It went down in April and May because of the economic lockdown, but now the levels are almost at the same as February or the beginning of March. So the trade has been going on regularly. What has been affected very much with this reduction to only essential travels is the everyday business at the border. So the big shopping malls in the US side, being San Diego, being Laredo, being El Paso, are very much affected, and the restaurants, because the Mexicans are not crossing, because the crossing is restricted. Also has happened that to Mexico. So that is why we are evaluating every month the situation at the border to see if we can relax some of the measures and then guarantee a vibrant economy to both sides of the regions. But at the same time, taking into account that the priority is the protection of people. And so that we have to continue to implement very strict sanitary measures to avoid a surge in contagions and of course in deaf people.
Thank you. Our next question. As a large nation, Mexico has the potential to play a dominant role in Latin America. Why then is the nation primarily focused instead on creating strong ties with the US and Canada? Is it a practical or ideological decision?
I think it's a practical decision. I mean, if we do 80% of our trade with the US and maybe a little bit more, 84 in general with the US and Canada, we need to prioritize our economic relationship there. Then, of course, we play an important role in Latin America. We are now chairing CELAC, which is one of the fora in which we coordinate positions in Latin America. And we have a very strong interaction with all Latin American countries. I remember when President López Obrador paid a visit to the US, and it was concentrated on USMCA, of course, and the cooperation with COVID. But several countries called him and called our foreign minister to say, please, can you tell also the president of the US these worries of this country and this? So the Latin American countries know that Mexico is a very valid interlocutor. But we have also limited resources. We are not a big country as the US. So we concentrate our resources, particularly our cooperation resources in Latin America with Central America, basically with Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, and Belize, which are our immediate neighbors. And we are concentrating our interactions, economic interactions with Pacific Alliance, Peru, Chile, and Colombia. And we have a very good dialogue now with Argentina. And so we are cooperating quite a lot with them. But we have to be realistic. Our main economic relationship is with the US, but not only economic. As I said, we have a common history. We have a common culture. And we cannot forget the size of the Mexican origin community in the US. 38 million people. That is larger than Colombia. So, and the US is now the second Spanish-speaking country in the continent. So even that special relationship with the US has to do with this Latin origin community. And we are changing the face of the US, not only Mexicans, but Puerto Ricans, Cubans, Colombians, Venezuelans. So we are in here together. And you are people like Maria are the face of the future of the of the present and the future of the United States. So that is why we give so much importance to our relationship with the US. When you think that there are 5 million Mexicans of Mexican origin in Los Angeles, more than 1 million of Mexican origin in Chicago, almost 600,000 in New York, then you understand why our consulates in Los Angeles, Chicago, and New York are larger than any embassy in the world except for the embassy to Washington.
Yeah, we love the folks here at the consulate too. So I think some of them are watching today. Well. So. Yeah.
Marcela is great. Carlos Gonzalez Gutierrez in San Diego, great. Remedios in San Francisco, Alejandra Bologna in San Jose. All of them are fantastic consuls.
Yes, yeah, we're very lucky. All right, our next question, is climate change also a major topic in Mexico?
I think it is. I think it is, particularly, I would say, with the younger generation and with the civil society. I think for civil society, NGOs, and younger generation, climate change is one of the issues that are most relevant for them. And why? Because one of the countries that can be more affected with the rising level of seas is Mexico. We are also seeing how hurricanes are impacting us, and you also feel it in Louisiana and Florida. How droughts are impacting us, and you're feeling it in California, and we feel it in Baja California. We are seeing a common responsibility of keeping the Gulf of Mexico and the Gulf Stream running and being free. So I would say yes, climate change is a priority in Mexico, and I always refer to Mexico as a whole, as a country. The government is very important part, and I represent the government, but the country is much more complex than only the positions of the government or of the private sector. And I would say that climate change is a key issue in Mexico, and particularly for the younger generations, which are the future of my country.
Thank you so much. How are Mexico and California collaborating to address the Sustainable Development Goals?
That I would say that the office in charge of the Sustainable Development Goals in Mexico is the office of El Ingeniero Alfonso Romo, which is the Chief of Cabinet of President López Obrador. And Mexico's government has been doing a great effort to not only consider the attainment of the Sustainable Development Goals at federal level, but going to the state level and even to the county level. I don't have the numbers here with me, but I promise we can send you all the numbers of what the state of Baja California is doing, Baja California Sur and Sonora, which are basically Baja California dealing with California on sustainable development goals. I know that we are working at the state level and at the municipality level. It's something I must say, I talked recently to Lieutenant Governor Eleni Kounalakis. We talked about different areas of cooperation, but we did not address the Sustainable Development Goals. And I think that's a point that you have. We should work more on attainment of the Sustainable Development Goals. And I think we have a greater strength. And I would like to even use more that strength and you know, pick the brains, is the network of universities of California. Yes, I think Berkeley, Stanford, University of California, San Diego, University of California, Los Angeles. I think we need to work more with Mexican universities. In Mexico is the Tecnológico de Monterrey, which is very involved in the Sustainable Development Goals. It's one of the two universities involved. I think the other is Iberoamericana, which is in Tijuana. Iberoamericana is in Tijuana, Colegio de la Frontera Norte. So we should work more at the university level on the attainment of the Sustainable Development Goals. And I will send you the exact data on what we're working on Baja California. And maybe you can send me what California is working on SDGs.
I will do that. We'll make sure.
Will be very, very badly affected by COVID in the whole world.
Yeah. Thank you. How can we solve the challenge of Central American immigration, which, as you point out, is so heartbreaking?
I think, as my president has said several times, and we agree on this, we have to address the root causes of migration. We have always seen in Mexico migration as an economic and social phenomenon, more than a national security challenge. It's not that we deny there are aspects of national security, for sure, but it's basically a social and economic phenomenon. So we have to ask ourselves, why are people migrating? And I think they migrate because they don't have enough opportunities, because they are affected also by drought. For example, the drought corridor in Central America has affected more than 60,000 families that were dedicated to coffee cultivation, and they have lost that. I mean, the coffee industry in El Salvador and this has been devastated by the drought. And if they don't have anything to produce and they don't find jobs in other areas, in their countries, what do they have to do? They migrate. And now with COVID, we are seeing, I was retweeting this morning one of the tweets of David Beasley, the head of the World Food Program, saying, listen, people, one of the main impacts of COVID is hunger and food insecurity. And there are studies that already there are near to 2 million people in food insecure in Central America. What they are going to do is migrate. So what do we have to do is just work with them, trying to find them jobs there, or trying at least to give them a lifeline to remain in the countries, to live instead of migrating. Because also the economic situation in Mexico and the US is not the best. So there is no guarantee that they will find jobs. So I think we have to think in the root causes of migration in general: lack of hope, lack of social and education and social opportunities, lack of job opportunities and economic. And we have to think, how do we counteract the very negative effects of COVID in their situation right now?
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to ask one more question, and then Maria is going to come back and join us.
Yes.
Is USMCA a much better agreement for Mexico than the old NAFTA?
I think to say something like that, you lose the complexity of USMCA and of NAFTA. There are people that said that NAFTA was terrible, and some others said NAFTA was great. I think NAFTA was great for some sectors, and it was terrible for others. And I think with USMCA, we tried to have a more level playing field for all sectors. I think it is too soon to say that it will be better than NAFTA in general. I think that it's better than NAFTA because it includes areas which were not contemplated in NAFTA that I already mentioned, like digital trade, like gender perspective, like indigenous populations, like small and medium enterprises. I think a very concrete dispute settlement mechanism that was not working in NAFTA and it's not working in the WTO. And it included now aspects of labor and environment that were not included before, and that will force us, fortunately, to work together much better and to take care better of our environment and of the workers' rights. But we will see, for example, how the automotive industry will transform itself. And if we are not able to do it fast and with a cooperative attitude, then Europe and Asia are changing very fast their automotive industry towards electric cars and this. And if we continue to fight on silly things like, not silly, but part of how do you interpret these rules on the content of steel and that, instead of changing how are we going to transform the automotive industry for the future.
Right.
If we don't think on that, then we will see that we would not have taken advantage of the USMCA. I think in a way it's a very good agreement that offers many opportunities. It's difficult to understand. It's very big, it's very thick, it's very complicated, and it creates a bureaucracy both internally, a bureaucracy, an internal bureaucracy of the three countries. You know, the committee for this, the committee for that, that will have to meet every 6 months. Even to follow that, it's a nightmare. And then the bureaucracy that was created in the US with implementing legislation. And the number of reports. Even to understand that, you need a team.
Right.
And it's not easy. So
No.
I hope that USMCA would be much better, and I hope that these bureaucracies will not impede us to progress forward.
Well, thank you so much. And to add to that complexity of the trade agreement, to also have this global pandemic, it's a lot. So, well, I'm glad that you're helping to steward this between our countries. And Maria, I'm going to turn it back over to you. Thank you so much, Ambassador.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Jessica. It was a great pleasure.
You did a great job. You see, we have an audience that is replete with great questions. And
Yes.
I know they could spend days with you because of the inextricably connected relationship that we have. I mean, we often say here that at America's Pastime, every baseball game, everybody's enjoying nachos.
Yes.
And our salsa has overtaken that sales of ketchup. So we at every level, we are connected, as you said, the names of our cities and so forth. But I also think it's important to note, Ambassador, that if we don't have a strong relationship with you and other key countries in the world, in fact, all countries, it's not as though the rest of the world is in a standstill. And so I think it's important to remind people that, at least for me, when I was entering and negotiating with every country, the countries that I was dealing with, either when I was walking in to meet with my counterparts, China was coming out, or after I left, China was coming in to visit them and sell them something as well. And we all know about the great investments that China's making around the world, around the Belt and Road Project, and so many other infrastructure investments. I was just recently in Ecuador to see all of the vast infrastructure investments being made by China in their country. So I just want to remind us that it's not a standstill proposition, that if we don't engage to deepen democracies and to have people understand our way of life, somebody else is going to step in the breach and take over leadership of the world. And I am touched by, for example, my experience in Estonia. When I was visiting there, they said, we rely on the United States to be the leader of the free world, because if not, right on our border here, the Russians want to come back, and we're looking to the West. We're looking to become a part of the free world. And so I think it's just important to remind us all about the importance of making sure that the entire Americas have a strong relationship and are helping pave the way for the rest of the world. So I wanted to have you speak to what China is doing in your country so that we can gain insights. What can you share with us?
Well, it's a very interesting question and a very interesting situation. China is our second trading partner, but we sell them around 7 billion to 8 billion US dollars a year, and we buy from them 100 billion US dollars. So one of the other things that we're doing now is to look for suppliers in other parts of the world, the US, to substitute basically the supply from China. And we are also looking in which products we can supply to the US that you are now purchasing from China. So one thing is the relationship at the trading level, which is very strong, the relationship of Mexico with China at trade level. And the other is at the investment level. The Chinese investments in Mexico are negligible, almost non-existent. Why? I think I've seen the investments of China in Africa because I was working with being ambassador to FAO. I travel quite a lot to Africa, and being ambassador to Kazakhstan, believe me, I saw One Belt, One Road directly because it goes there. It's exactly the crossing of Kazakhstan and all of this. The investment model of China, which is based on very fast loan granting, but then sending their companies and their workers to build, is not suitable for Mexico because we have the capacity to do all the infrastructure projects. So that model of investment has not bear fruit in Mexico because China and Mexico at the development level are more similar than, for example, the Chinese investments in Africa. And because we have access to markets for loans that are at a very competitive rate, so we don't need to go to ask loans to China. Mexico has market access and good rates because we are a quite and stable and credible and solid country. So are the Chinese interested in investing in Mexico? Yes. Is that easy for them to invest in Mexico? Not so much. For example, when we opened the tenderings for the oil industry, the Chinese companies, I think, won only 2, and they participated in several. But there were companies like Royal Dutch Shell that they won 9 in deep water. So all the big companies are in Mexico. We have access to markets for loans on a good rates. We have capabilities that we don't need the Chinese companies and Chinese workers to work in Mexico. We have the capabilities, as good as even better than the Chinese ones. So the investment in Mexico are not so big, but the trade is very big. And I like that you mentioned Estonia. Estonia is it's a great country, particularly in software. My husband was ambassador to Estonia, to Finland and Estonia.
Oh, interesting.
And you know why they are so good also in software? Because the Estonians during the Soviet Union, they were the ones making the maps for the intelligence services and this. So they were the best trained to develop GPS. And an Estonian company sells their services to Telmex to do the tracking of cars and this and GPS. So the whole world is interconnected. But I totally agree. I think Latin America has a great capabilities and a great number of resources, basically its people, to go forward. And that we can negotiate with China and with the rest of Asia from a stronger position than maybe other regions. And that if the US understands also that and supports that, and I think they are doing it, and I hope they will continue to do it, whoever wins the elections in November, then we will have a bright future. Because I think in general, Latin America's people, Latin American, are committed to democratic values and to the respect of human rights. And we have just to remember that slavery was abolished first in Mexico and Latin America than in the US.
All right, so you're way ahead of us on some things. That's marvelous.
Yes.
Am I not surprised? Am I not surprised? Ambassador, you've been generous with your time. Our time is up. And so I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for making me so proud for your leadership. And now I know that Kim wants to close us out, and we wish you good health for all your loved ones. Look forward to actually seeing you in person the next time.
Oh, I'm really looking forward to go to Los Angeles and California. I have to suspend my trip there.
We can go to a good soccer game.
Ambassador Maria, we are so appreciative of sharing your time and expertise today. This discussion was so informative, underscoring the importance and strength and the common history and interests between the United States and Mexico. This has just been a phenomenal conversation. We thank you so very much. For our viewers, you know this was a phenomenal program. So please, there will be a number that will come up on the screen. Please text the word give and help us keep these going with a great donation from yourself. We've got so many great programs coming up for you in September and October, in addition to our usual weekly politics in the time of coronavirus with Professor Dan Schnur. Next week, we have General John Allen, who's president of the Brookings Institution, who will be speaking on leadership, followed by the next day, Fiona Hill. The week after, we have Anne-Marie Slaughter, Jill Lepore, Alex Padilla, and Ron Brownstein from CNN, who is part of the 2020 presidential election series. So please go to our website at lawac.org and register today. Sign up to become a member and make a donation. Ambassador Maria, we thank goodness for all of your expertise and everything that you've shared. God bless you, and we'll be thinking good thoughts for Mexico too, Ambassador, through this crazy, challenging COVID time. So our hearts are with you. Thank you all. Be safe, stay informed, and we'll see you next week.